Hi, I'm Amelia. Welcome to Herbert Smith Freehills. We're here today filming an episode for the UNSW Law Society podcast, InCites. Okay, so welcome to our reception area. This is where our clients come to wait before they come to meet us, say for example, for a mediation that they're having, or when we prepare them before they're going to court, or we're signing deals, or whatever other matters the clients need to come to see us for. At Herbert Smith Freehills, we have a whole range of programs that promote diversity within the firm. For example, our gender equality network, multitude of diversity programs supporting LGBTQI, our multicultural network, and as well as our gender equality network, an equitable briefing program, which I personally am involved in, to make sure that we brief an equal number of male and female counsel. So now we're on level 33, which is our library and cafe area. So once a week we have a solicitor's lunch on this floor where we're all encouraged to sit and eat together, which is really lovely. The firm also promotes a huge range of getting together and doing things outside of work. So for example, we have our social committee, our culture committee, and lots of great ways that we can have fun outside of work. This is where the magic happens. Oh look, it's Leon, who we were just talking to earlier.
This is Amelia. Amelia is one of our lawyers. This is Jen. Jen is one of our paralegals. She was a clerk here. Say hi, Jen.
Hi.
Come in and take a look at Leon's office. Come on, let's lift up the veil. Oh, make it look like you're working. Go on. This is my desk. So as you can see, I have a model A380. This is because Qantas is one of our key clients. We just did a matter with them recently. As you can see here are some action shots from the recent trial that we had. I usually get in about 8:30. My typical day during the trial, for example, we would usually have witnesses coming in, so we would start preparing for witness conferences, usually meet with them, run through documents with them. During court, obviously we were up at court every day. I was lucky to be able to go to court every day. At the moment, I'm preparing witness bundles for another trial that we have going on, so I'm preparing some document bundles. Generally, I'll have a call with a client or an expert witness in the middle of the day, so I'll prepare for that, go to those meetings, and yeah, then come back and file my emails. That's my day.
You are listening to InCites, produced by the University of New South Wales Law Society, a podcast dedicated to bring you an insight into law school, the legal profession, and legal issues. The production team would also like to show our respects and acknowledge the Bedegal people, who are the traditional custodians of the land, of elders past and present on which this podcast is made.
This episode is sponsored by Herbert Smith Freehills, a leading global law firm with 25 offices around the world, and a vision to be a community of exceptional people committed to perform outstandingly in different roles. During the episode, we will also refer to Herbert Smith Freehills as HSF or Freehills. The firm has achieved Band 1 Chambers recognition in various practice areas, including international arbitration and corporate and M&A. HSF has also a wide range of initiatives spanning pro bono legal services, community partnerships, sustainable business practices, and business and human rights. HSF Sydney recruits summer clerks every year for a 10-week program, December to early February. During the program, clerks will rotate through 2 different practice areas and assist teams with delivering real work for key clients, assist with research tasks, draft documents, and client communication, and attend meetings and court hearings. Attend workshops and presentations covering all of our practice areas, including legal skills, D&I, and pro bono initiatives. Have the opportunity to participate in pro bono and firm culture initiatives through our diversity networks, LGBTI, ability, multicultural, gender equity matters, and veterans networks, and contribute to ongoing innovation projects through our Innovation Lab program and network with solicitors and partners from across the national firm. For this episode of the podcast, we have invited Leon Chung, a partner in Herbert Smith Freehills Disputes Group, and Amelia Loughland, a solicitor in the Disputes Group. Leon is an experienced litigator and arbitrator with particular expertise in alternative dispute resolution processes and international disputes. He is a director of the Australian Centre of International Commercial Arbitration, a counsellor and vice president of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators Australia, Australia's leading international dispute resolution bodies. His practice at HSF includes commercial disputes, regulatory investigations, international arbitration, and providing strategic advice to boards and high-profile individuals. He is listed as a leading lawyer in litigation, alternative dispute resolution, and regulatory practice in Best Lawyers Australia, and a preeminent arbitration lawyer in Doyle's Guide. We are also joined by Amelia, a graduate of UNSW Law School and a fellow at the Gilbert+Tobin Centre of Public Law. During her time at UNSW, she was an editor of the UNSW Law Journal, a legal researcher at the Judicial Commission of New South Wales, and a research assistant for Professor Rosalind Dixon. A huge welcome and thank you to Leon and Amelia for joining us today.
Thanks, Tracey.
Thanks for having us.
What is a skill or talent that you'd most like to learn?
For me, I find myself stuck in conversations at the moment, and I'd like to know, at least to pretend to know how to talk about cryptocurrency and make my fortune in Dogecoin.
And the next one is, how do you balance your work and private life?
I think it's important to set clear priorities. So even we've just had a busy period with a trial, which has been quite full on in terms of the workload. But I think it's important just to be clear to yourself things that you absolutely want to go to, for example, family events or commitments that you have, and just make sure that you prioritize those. Maybe you can't do everything that you would otherwise do, but if you have it really clear to you what's important and make that work, then I think you just need to make sure that you enforce those priorities.
I think it's important to be quite planned, I think, because if you're sort of not planned, it can be a bit tricky.
So looking back on your student days, is there anything that you would have done differently at uni?
I was hyper involved at uni, as I think you guys saw from looking at my some of those things you read out before. And so I was involved in lots of societies, and I worked really hard at uni, and I'm very grateful for all those things because they I think got me here. But I also wish that I had more fun and relaxed a bit more, because now I'm working quite a busy job, and I look back on those years and I think I should have appreciated having an afternoon off more than I ever did. And I used to just try and get ahead of my readings all the time because I was a massive nerd. So
those things stand her in good stead now, so shouldn't have changed a thing.
Yeah, I wish I'd relaxed a bit more when I had the chance, but otherwise it was great to be as involved as I was.
I mean, you're really testing my memory about uni days. Look, I think people should do what they want to do at uni because it's so open in terms of what you can do, and whether it's societies or mooting or extra readings, as Amelia was doing, and other things. It's in a sense doing what you want to do. Now, if you're asking me if I would have changed anything, I mean, I can't really remember.
And then thinking back to the beginning of your careers, and obviously, Amelia, you've just started yours, but what made you choose to study law at university? Like, what got you to where you are now?
It sounds like a trite thing to say, because people are like, I don't know how I ended up here. But I was one of those kids, I think I was in year 6, and I told my teacher I was going to be a barrister, which is really embarrassing. But I always was very attracted to the idea, because I loved English, building arguments, I loved studying history, and law was such a perfect way to apply those skills of argumentation, logic, thinking through evidence and things like that. And applying it in terms of public speaking and that performative element of law and strategy, which I always loved, and I was always very attracted to it. And going to law school was such a perfect confirmation of that, because I just loved it right from the beginning, and I still love it. So it's not a very good, I don't know how I ended up here. I was going to be a doctor or something, but I think I was always wanting to do law. So.
Well, I mean, as you can probably tell from my physique, I was identified earlier as an Olympic rower. But I thought, other than that option, the law might suit. Actually, to be honest, I didn't really have quite the same understanding as to what I wanted to do as Amelia did. Like, from my perspective, it was very much, let's see what I'm doing. And when I got to uni, there were things like, I know, should you be doing things like medicine, that type of thing, but that wasn't really what I wanted to do. So you're sort of doing this combined degree, and when you're doing the combined degree, you're not entirely sure which of those things you might take. And even when you start and you sort of choose law, I didn't come here knowing, for example, that I was going to be in dispute. So it's for me, it's been very much just seeing how things have played out.
Okay, and for you both studied an honours degree, and what was that like? I'd imagine that there'd be more of a focus on research than a normal bachelor's.
So I did my honours degree, I did a research thesis, which was a fantastic opportunity because I'd worked for Professor Rosalind Dixon as a research assistant, and then we kind of worked together to develop this idea for my thesis and worked really closely with her, and I've been very lucky that has turned into 2 publications that I've recently published. So it was an incredible experience in delving into a topic really deeply, having just by myself to think through the argumentation, and it was constitutional law but also political theory, which are 2 big passions of mine. So I thought, I'll get this out of the way before I start at HSF and might not be doing political theory anymore. So no, I really enjoyed it, and that has kind of led me into some more academic work, which has been a great outlet and kind of balance to everyday legal practice.
Your honours degree experience?
I think actually, and your listeners, I didn't go to uni in New South Wales, and at Sydney, the honours degree keeps shifting. And, yeah, I know it's something I know you don't recognise it as a degree, but it sort of keeps changing. And when I was doing it, there was no separate honours degree. People were sort of got honours depending on how well they did at uni. So from my perspective, it was, in a sense, I was studying the things I was studying, but it wasn't then a separate additional course or anything like that.
Back then, did either of you imagine that you would be in the position that you are now, given that there are so many different pathways in the legal sphere and you did quite different degrees?
I certainly didn't see myself at a big law firm like this. I'd always thought I would, because of my interest in public law, I always thought I would end up doing government legal jobs, and I also, a lot of my work at the Judicial Commission was focused on criminal law, and I always thought I was going to go into criminal law. But through my work, I think as a research assistant, but also I just thought I would put my hand up for a clerkship and see how I went. I think I realised that I wasn't so much set on the type of law so much as the practice of law itself and some of those skills that I talked about that attracted me to law in the first place. And legal practice was actually what I really loved, and I realised that practicing law, especially high stakes litigation somewhere like here, is the best possible way to get that really great practice, to develop those skills. And when you're working with such brilliant people and learning your craft in that way, I realised that was what I really loved, as opposed to just the which legislation you were applying or what the actual cases were about.
And Leon,
back in uni, I did foresee that come about 2020, a pandemic would sweep the world, and
there's a tweet to prove it.
No, look, I mean, not really. Like it's always hard to know. I certainly didn't think I would necessarily be at a law firm I didn't actually know sort of very much about law firms, so I almost picked law firms based on what your friends said, and then in terms of even the area I've ended up in terms of law, that wasn't necessarily a deliberate choice I made right at the start of my career, and the type of work I've done, that's also sort of evolved. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, Leon, as your practice encompasses international arbitration and disputes, you work a lot with global clients. Have you ever worked overseas before, like for a period of time?
I have. I worked in New York for a while, for about a year or two, and that was great. It was just the fact of just living in New York was fantastic, and then sort of working there was great. And when I was there, I was doing mostly international arbitration, largely because that meant I didn't have to sit the New York bar at that point in time. So that was great. And then in terms of since then, a lot of our clients are sort of, either international clients or they got operations overseas. And so that's meant that we've had to travel overseas to sort of, this was before sort of, I guess, COVID, see them or have hearings and that type of thing. And it's really interesting. Like a couple of years ago, went to Korea to do a hearing, and I hadn't been to Korea before, and that was a really sort of interesting place.
But because of COVID, obviously that has changed. So
It has, yes.
in what way has it changed?
Well, we've actually learnt a lot about sort of working remotely and doing things by video and that type of thing, which has actually been pretty, I'm surprised at how, in some ways, how seamless that's been and how quickly people have adapted. And I think Amelia will be able to comment on this. She started actually right in the middle of the pandemic. So as a grad, sort of how you found that?
Obviously, it was quite strange because it was just I was just by myself, and I think you miss a lot of obviously it was all fine, but it's so much better being back in the office as a junior person, I think, because you just pick up so much and you learn so much from being around people. Even just sitting in, Leon often just lets me sit in meetings and just watch kind of how he runs client meetings and speaks with barristers, and you can't really dial people into those meetings so much when you're working from home. So I find it much easier to build a network and pick up a lot as a junior. But I was very lucky to know quite a lot of the people in my team when I joined the firm, so that I kind of had those networks in place already.
And Amelia, your work on gender in the legal industry has been quite impressive. How has your law school and legal research experience shaped your career choices?
Yeah, so I was obviously very lucky to have the influence of Professor Rosalind Dixon, who I mentioned was my thesis supervisor, plus my employer as a research. Well, I was her researcher, and she's the one that encouraged me to undertake this study as part of a subject I was doing that went towards honours, and undertook this study, ended up working into publication, and that kind of just led into this, lots of different debates and issues and speeches I was able to do to kind of have, broaden awareness around what I was identifying as potential gendered interruption issues. And so I think it was really important to me that, I didn't seek this out from Herbert Smith Freehills, but they definitely supported me very much in that being a passion of mine. I never felt like I had to kind of keep that separate from the firm. They very much encouraged me. I was actually invited to speak to the London disputes practice about my research, and they, started some of their own initiatives around interruption behaviour and making sure that junior women got the chance to speak in meetings and things like that. So it was amazing to see that kind of impact. The firm, helped me in this big panel discussion that we had last year with a Victorian Supreme Court judge. So that's obviously just supporting me in my personal capacity. But I also see that the firm takes really seriously some of the things that I'm concerned about, like gender diversity, cultural diversity in the firm, and I'm really proud of that. I don't feel like it's something they do for marketing purposes. You see some of the incredible women that are the leaders of this firm. So that was definitely a factor in me choosing to come here and staying here and feeling like I want to be part of kind of greater efforts, things like the equitable briefing program as well that I'm quite closely involved in.
Yeah, that's really important to be supported in your endeavours apart from your usual work as well.
Exactly.
And as a vacation clerk, you also had rotations in corporate law, M&A and takeovers. So what made you stick with disputes and commercial litigation over that?
I was working for a great partner there, and I was very lucky just with the timing because this new deal had come up, so I got to be involved in I got to go to this big meeting, and it's so different in M&A because everyone's trying to work together, obviously, like everyone wants to work together, whereas in litigation, we're apart and we're constantly sending, passive-aggressive letters to each other. So the whole dynamic on the other side was completely different, and I really enjoyed that process of seeing, we did a due diligence project and just kind of trying to figure out the ins and outs of this company in a short time. I found it all really interesting. But I think probably the reason I chose litigation is because my passion is in, as I mentioned, I was always a massive law nerd at law school, and I just love the cases and the kind of application of them, building up arguments, case theories, and that was what always kind of energized me most at work. And doing this case recently has definitely cemented that being my passion. So I think that's my home in the firm.
Okay, and of course, after graduating, or even a little bit before that, there was the PLT experience. So for both of you, what was that like, and do you have any advice for people going to partake in it?
Well, it's quite straightforward here because, and I would definitely encourage people, this is one of the benefits of coming to a firm like this where it's all integrated, because my PLT was just my normal work. So I just kind of worked for 3 months or whatever it was, and Leon just signed it off at the bottom saying that I'd done PLT. And they kind of do run College of Law, so the theory side, through the firm as well. So we have like our own tutor that does all our exams and everything. So it's all very smooth sailing. It's the best way to do it, I think.
I actually genuinely don't recall my PLT training. I mean, I think it would have been pretty similar to that, because I think you just do it here and it's no different to if there were no PLT, you'd still be doing the same work. So I think that's essentially what it is.
Yeah, and I think that's the best thing about doing it in that practical way, because it's not like you're doing fake mediation. You're actually doing one or preparing for a case, which is the best way to do it, obviously.
And then Amelia, you also previously worked in the Judicial Commission of New South Wales. So what was that experience like?
Yeah, that was such a fantastic job, because I had it pretty much all throughout my law degree. And what we did was, it was mainly criminal law, but also some civil law. It was reading cases to update the bench book, so the civil trials bench book, criminal trials bench book, sentencing bench book. There was a lot of review of sentencing decisions. So it just meant that by virtue of my work, I was completely across all the new decisions that came down. So I read all the High Court cases, I read most of the Court of Criminal Appeal cases. So I just was just across what was happening, which was such a privilege and something that I kind of missed now. I have to definitely go out of my way to make sure I read the new High Court cases and things like that. But it taught me such great skills in being able to read cases, digest them, put them in a form, because you have to, summarise these cases for one sentence to go into the bench book amongst all the other authorities. So I think that skill has been so helpful in, for example, drafting research notes, drafting submissions, where you have to distill and then apply a case authority in that very concise way. So if there are any jobs going, the Judicial Commission, you should all apply, because it's such a great job to have during uni.
Leon, so what is it like as a practicing solicitor of the Supreme Court of New South Wales, the Federal Court of Australia, and also the High Court of Australia?
I guess that's interesting. I mean, I guess that's sort of the thing that you get when you sort of get your practicing certificate. So that in some ways that's kind of, I mean, I think the main difference, I suspect probably for people in the different groups, as in, say, disputes as compared to transactional groups, is that probably it's much more important for people in disputes groups to have those rights of audience, to be able to practice in those courts, because they might have to go there. It's less of a day-to-day thing for people in corporate. But I mean, certainly as part of our when people come and they get admitted, then they get their practicing certificate pretty shortly thereafter and become admitted as solicitors. And so I think that, for example, Amelia did that earlier this year as part of her, PLT, and then straight into the admission.
Mm-hmm. And let's talk about Freehills now. So what made you both want to work at HSF, and what is it like working here?
So I think I touched on some of the things that I mentioned earlier, in terms of being very attracted to the commitment to diversity, supporting people in kind of it's used a lot, this phrase, but I really like it, so I'm going to say it too, is that the support of people being their whole selves at work. I really like the sense that you don't have to be a certain type to work at HSF, and that isn't also something that people just say at clerkship nights. I've definitely found that there's a whole variety of people who are all brilliant lawyers but aren't a particular mould of people, and I find that a really enriching workplace to be in, constantly challenged by different people, different views, and I think that's a really valuable, especially being a junior lawyer, it's the best way to learn and to develop my skills. Another thing, and this isn't, I never really believed this at clerkship nights, people always said it's a very flat structure, and I never knew what that actually meant. I was like, yeah, but I'm sure in my head partners' doors would always be closed, and you did your work, you sent it to a senior associate, they fixed it up, and then they sent it on, whereas my experience has been, I work quite directly with Leon. I get a huge amount of responsibility for someone who's only been a solicitor for a year. I've only been a solicitor since January. I haven't been working in the team for a year, and it's just been the best place to learn. And also, I don't think it should be understated as well that being at a firm like this, you do get the most interesting matters, in my opinion, because, the type of clients that come to us with the scale of the problems that they have, you really do see some really interesting legal problems and are helping clients during really difficult times. And that is, I think, has been really, really interesting, and just some of, I think, the best experiences I could possibly have in my first year of practice.
And when you're talking about a flat structure, you mean like a really integrated workplace where there's no particular hierarchy?
Yeah, sorry, I just used the corporate speak as if it was, self-evident. But yeah, the hierarchy is just non-evident, I think. So, just previously we had the head of disputes, who's head of disputes, I think, for like the whole firm now.
Universal.
Yeah. Just coming around, like sitting on my desk, chatting with me, asking me what I was doing, chatting with Leon, being able just to speak directly with anyone in the firm. There's no sense that anyone is too low down in the hierarchy to be able to raise a question or to ask if they want to do a different type of work or a different matter or get involved. If you put yourself forward to get involved, people will always encourage that. And I find that really, really great. The firm doesn't, even though the work we do is really serious, we don't take ourselves too seriously and never think that anyone is beneath being able to be pushed forward.
It's a very broad church, like I think it's often said, here, there's, as Amelia says, there's such a huge variety of people, all really amazing lawyers, and you get a chance to work with all of them, but you also get I think you get, the main thing I think particularly in terms of the work we do is you get challenged, but you're also supported in what you do, so you are. I think that's a really important thing like that, because when you're sort of developing your skills, you want to be challenged. You don't want to be doing the same thing all the time. And I think it's always been, to my sort of knowledge and observation, such a meritocracy in terms of people being given the opportunity to do things, and if they can do those things, and that if they can show they can take on that responsibility, then that they get given that chance. And Amelia has been here for, as she said, about a year, and she's done the most sort of amazing job with what she's done. She's been in court instructing. She's been helping to draft submissions for really significant matters, and it's all about sort of being able to get involved in all those things. And as Amelia said, there's not sort of people. We don't view things as, this person's a third-year lawyer, so that means that these are the types of things they should be doing. It's really more about, what's the best people, what's the best team for this, and making sure that everyone's involved.
Okay, and then what is the HSFication program like, and what is your advice for those wanting to apply?
Oh, I can speak from the applier, and Leon can talk about what he looks for when people are applying. So yeah, as I mentioned, I kind of never saw myself working at a big firm, and I just thought all my friends were doing it, so I should probably put some applications in. And the vacation clerk program was just amazing, because as a clerk you get to everyone makes sure you do all the interesting work, which is not to say that my work isn't always interesting now, but they take you to the most interesting client meetings and make sure you get to see the kind of best of everything. And so I was doing things I never thought I would be doing. So I worked in Graham Johnson's team, who has a specialty in public law, and we were drafting this public law advice, challenging a piece of legislation with writing to a top barrister. And that was my first day. I was helping draft this advice. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And and then in corporate, they were taking me along to all these high-flying meetings. I remember being in a boardroom at Kingwood Mallison's, being like, get me another coffee. I was like, felt like a high flyer. So no, it was an incredible experience. And also, that's another thing not to underestimate is the networks that you build, the people around you, especially working in this job, which can be, quite challenging at times. Having really great friends around you. A lot of the friends that I made during my clerkship program are now some of my closest friends that I work with in Leon's team as well. So building those friendships was really important. I think, my best advice to people applying would just be not to self-exclude from anything on the basis that you don't think that you fit the type of a particular firm, or you don't have the relevant experience, or you don't know what a SPA is or whatever. If you're passionate and you can demonstrate your passion, you're interested in law, you're interested in putting yourself forward, just do it. Because I think, I haven't been on the the person interviewing, but if you can, I always think that showing passion and demonstrating that is one of the best things you can be as a clerk, because you're not coming as a fully formed lawyer, you're coming as someone to gain those experiences.
Yeah, so coming in with a learning mindset and showing that you want to do everything that they give you.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. And so from the other end, from
yeah, no, look, I mean that's sort of, I mean that's I agree with all of that. I mean I think we really sort of when we're interviewing clerks, we are certainly I am looking for people who we think have the potential to have really great careers at HSF. I mean, that's what we're looking for. I mean, the clerkship itself is a relatively short period, but we're looking for people who we think these people can really have great long careers here, and that's what we're really sort of recruiting for. And the clerkship is a period to allow them to gain some experience, get to know the firm, allow the firm to get to know them. But we're really looking for people, and as Amelia says, I mean, at that level, no one's looking for particular legal skills or particular legal knowledge. But I think we're looking for people who are enthusiastic, who are open to new challenges, who are open to learning, who are open to just getting involved, and I think that's really the main thing. And you see some of the most amazing sort of CVs and the most amazing people when you interview them. You sort of think to yourself, if I were now on the other side, I wouldn't get a job because these people have done so many things. But it's those people, and then you sort of see when they start, and people like Amelia who come along and they're absolutely amazing as graduates and as solicitors, because they've got that same mindset to how they approach their work and how they approach the way they do things. And you've got a whole lots of people with that type of mindset.
Yeah, so being more future forward looking and seeing whether this person can grow with HR.
Yeah, exactly. You're looking to see whether these people are people who you can see being part of, your team, the group more generally. That's what you're really looking for.
And as a global law firm, what do you think makes HSF stand out amongst the other law firms?
I think Leon's probably better placed to answer that. I haven't worked at any other law firm, so I'm not really sure.
Well, I've only worked at one other law firm when I was working overseas. But look, I think sort of HSF is quite unique in some ways, because it's got a very big and very strong practice here in Australia, but it's also got all these offices across the Asia Pacific, in London, in the US, that type of thing. And I think what that means is it really makes it very seamless in terms of if you're giving advice or working for clients these days and you're trying to deal with issues which have got international dimensions, it's much easier. You can say to the client, well, these are the issues you're going to face here in Australia, here in Hong Kong, here in Singapore, and you're doing that in a single advice rather than trying to coordinate amongst different law firms. And I think it's very much the same thing for our lawyers who a lot of whom work interstate, work overseas. It's a much easier thing to manage. So I think from that perspective, it really is sort of a great sort of it's sort of a great mix of those things.
Amelia, what do you think would be the thing that stands out the most from other law firms? Of course, you said that you haven't been to others, but your opinion working at HSF.
Just to the best of your knowledge, Amelia.
Well, I think all the things that I mentioned earlier about what attracted me to HSF is why I chose it. So that would certainly be the attributes that stand out. But I definitely support the point about the integration of the global aspect. So, for example, when I did that speech last year about the interruptions paper, a Melbourne partner watched my speech and then contacted me and said, do you think you could speak to my old office, which was in London? And then the London disputes group, I spoke to them, and then I spoke to his Melbourne team, and it felt like, because we're all like on the same network, it felt like a completely integrated thing, and they're all my colleagues now, and I stay in contact with all of them. So I really felt like I was part of that kind of global network at that point in time. I also did a pro bono research project last year with the London office, because they were conducting an inquiry into administrative law and they were using Australia as a comparison. So they immediately contacted us and said, do you want to make a submission about how your Administrative Decisions Judicial Review Act works? So I worked with some other solicitors in our team to do that, and once again that was a completely seamless process. So you definitely feel the benefit of working within this. Not only do you have all the excellent lawyers in our Sydney office, but in Australia and worldwide. So I feel very lucky to be part of that network.
Okay, that's wonderful. And lastly, a piece of advice to give to law students or aspiring law students.
Oh, I look forward to hearing this.
Well, yeah, once again, it's what I said before. I think it's finding your passion. So don't just do law because you think that, it looks good on a CV or it's an ad hoc thing to your other degree. I think that at least I see myself very much as part of a profession, and that means a lot to me to be a professional in the law. And I think that comes with a sense that you need to feel like, you're part of it. You have a passion for studying it, but also practicing it. And if you can find that passion and pursue it, then I think it's one of the most wonderful careers you can have. So just keeping yourself open-minded to every opportunity that you can take to pursue that passion would be my advice.
I think that's right. You have to take the opportunity, and you have to make the most of the opportunities you get. So it's things come up, and in terms of areas of law, I think people shouldn't get too hung up about trying to work out what particular area of law they want to be in, or what types of work they want to do when they start, because you really just don't know until you've actually had the experience, and even if you've studied the subject at law school, until you've done it in practice, you just won't know what it's like and whether you'll like it. So I think, as Amelia says, be very open to those things, be very open to the opportunities, and also just really learn from and speak to all the other people that particularly if you start at a law firm like this, talk to people and see what their experiences are like, and I think that really gives you a really good sense as to what you might want to do.
Because of course the legal profession can be incredibly rewarding, and there's so many different paths that people can take. So definitely being open to experiences will enrich the general experience of doing law or practicing law eventually. Well, thank you so much to you both for your time today, Leon and Amelia. So hearing your perspectives and also your stories has been immensely rewarding, and we are grateful to be able to gain a better understanding of HSF.